I really have the honor and privilege of introducing our next speaker. You'll notice I'm going to read his bio, but the first thing it says is Ronald S. Johnson retired. I mean, this guy is the busiest retired person that I know. So, but he's the chair of the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus. First of all, the main thing that I work with him on, and many others in this room, and we're proud to be. The Reading Project is really proud to be an anchor organization of the caucus, and so they will be at the AIDS Watch next month here in D.C., so check it out. Ronald retired at the end of 2017 as the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at AIDS United, and he continues to consult with AIDS United on HIV and aging policy and advocacy. His career includes serving as New York City's first citywide coordinator for AIDS policy and Associate Executive Director for Policy at GMHC, and directed the policy activities of AIDS Action, which merged with National AIDS Fund in 2011 to become AIDS United. Ronald was a member of the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS, also known as PACHA, from 96 to 2001, and he, as I mentioned, he currently serves as chair of the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus, and he also serves on the board of Point Source Youth, which is focused on ending youth homelessness, especially among LGBTQ youth. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree from the City College of New York. Let's give a warm welcome to Ronald Johnson.
Thank you, Jeff, for that introduction. I want to thank the National Working Positive Coalition, the Reunion Project, the host committee, and all of the staff and volunteers of United Baltimore Positively Living Well. Yesterday was a great start, and I am confident that today will complete a successful 2 days. I also want to thank you who are participating today and those of us who were here yesterday also. As mentioned in the introduction, I am an HIV long-term survivor. I've been living with HIV for 34 years, and I am an older adult living with HIV. At 75 years of age, I'm too young to run for president, but I do have my eye on 2028. In my remarks this morning, I want to talk about another aspect of positively living well for people surviving and aging with HIV. I want to start by recognizing, well in advance of June 5th, all of us who are longtime survivors. And while our primary focus is on those who are 50 years and older, we must recognize, as Jeff did, and hold up lifetime HIV survivors, including the people who make up the Dandelions movement. This coming June 5th will be the 10th anniversary of the HIV Long-Term Survivor Awareness Day. And a shout out to Tez Anderson, founder of Let's Kick Ass, a survivor syndrome, who got that Awareness Day started. In the past 10 years, we have brought an overlapping awareness of HIV long-term survivors and awareness of HIV and aging and the needs and concerns of people living with HIV who are 50 years and older, who now make up over 50% of all of the people living with HIV in the United States, and who are projected to make up 70% of all people living with HIV by 2030. Some jurisdictions have already reached that benchmark. We are surviving, and our numbers are growing. In recognizing our growing numbers, we must not overlook or minimize the myriad challenges that we still face, not the least of which are appalling gaps in the overall quality of health care for HIV long-term survivors and older adults living with HIV. The challenges we face will be the focus of some of the sessions later this afternoon. In my view, however, the neglect that was so shamefully rampant just 3 to 4 years ago is receding. For me, one sign of the increasing focus on HIV and aging is the objective in the updated National HIV/AIDS Strategy that was released early in the Biden administration. That objective focuses on older adults living with HIV and long-term survivors and reads, expand capacity to provide whole person care to older adults with HIV and long-term survivors. This is the first population-specific objective since the National HIV Strategy was first released in 2010. Now, I'm a glass half filled person, so I see this as a sign of progress. I acknowledge that for many people, the glass is still half empty, at best. Either way you look at it, we have a lot of work to do. That is why our being here and working over these 2 days is so important. Looking over what I see as progress, I want to surface and say out loud what the medical advancements over the past 25 plus years have shown us. A person living with HIV has a similar life expectancy to an HIV negative person, providing they are diagnosed in good time, have good access to medical care, and are able to adhere to their HIV treatment. The experiences of many of us who are in this room and who were here yesterday, I think, demonstrate that we are thriving and working to achieve wellness and quality of life. And we heard Melanie and others tell their stories about how we, all of us are thriving and living. The work of the Reunion Project, of the Working Positive Coalition, the Maryland Coalition of HIV and Aging, and the individual advocates and service providers here in Maryland also demonstrate that we are moving forward. Building on our work and mindful of what we still need to do, I think we can start thinking and talking openly about longevity for HIV long-term survivors and older adults living with HIV. There are, of course, many challenges and barriers remaining to achieving the reality of longevity for people living with HIV. The glass is still half filled. But I think longevity for people living with HIV is not a dream or a distant hope. It is an achievable goal. I think we can add longevity when we talk about and advocate quality of life. I think we can say positive living well and long. My thinking about longevity for people aging with HIV was jogged by a recent development here in Maryland. At the beginning of this year, the governor, Wes Moore, signed an executive order directing the Maryland Department of Aging to develop and implement the Longevity Ready Maryland Initiative, a multi-sector plan for longevity. The governor's hope, as stated in his executive order, is that this initiative would evaluate existing programs, establish new policies and programs, and engage in strategic planning for the future to enable Maryland to become a longevity-ready and age-friendly state, where Maryland residents can live with and age with dignity and independence, to positively transform the aging experience for all Marylanders, the governor said in the executive order. According to the Department of Aging, the long-term goals of the initiative are building a longevity ecosystem, promoting economic opportunities for all, affording longevity, optimizing health, wellness, and mobility. The department says further, the initiative will take a whole-of-life approach, which will include investments in health and well-being to create new pathways for healthy living over a lifetime. The department says that the initiative will address structural and social factors that perpetuate disparities and inequities that impact people across the lifespan. Doesn't that sound familiar to all of us who have been thinking and talking about the structural and social determinants of health? I was also struck by the similarity between how the department describes the longevity initiative and Objective 2.5 in the updated National HIV/AIDS Strategy that I mentioned earlier. To repeat, that objective reads, expand capacity to provide whole person care to older adults with HIV and long-term survivors. I think a whole-of-life approach is a companion to whole person care, and that longevity is a logical component of quality of life. Let me state a few caveats. First, I am not a doctor, and I am not addressing the medical aspects of longevity in relation to living with HIV and aging with HIV. The medical aspects must be addressed and researched in any further discussion of longevity for HIV long-term survivors and older adults living with HIV. That research must go further to look at the interaction and how HIV accelerates the aging process. We need to know more. I am also not giving a blanket endorsement of the new Maryland Longevity Initiative. It is still too new, and we will need to see how the Department of Aging actually implements the initiative and how much the community, including those of us here in Maryland who are living with HIV, are meaningfully engaged in the planning, development, and implementation of the initiative. What I am bringing up and endorsing is the idea of longevity as the logical and deserved component of the quality of life for HIV long-term survivors and older adults living with HIV. Many of us are surviving and thriving, and we all have the right to live and thrive for as long as we can. Longevity can and should be part of our living. Too many of us, however, are not surviving, and too many more are not thriving. Our healthcare system and our social safety net is not designed to promote our well-being. That is why we, people living with HIV, have insisted that quality of life must be an integral component of the response to HIV, not just biomedical interventions. That is why the United States PLHIV Caucus and the nationwide networks of people living with HIV have demanded that all of the social and structural barriers to our wellness must be dismantled and replaced with systems that are grounded firmly in racial, social, and economic justice. As I said earlier, whether we see the glass of our health and wellness as being half empty or half filled, we have a lot of work to do. But we should recognize that not so long ago, the glass was empty for too many of us. We can take a moment to appreciate what we have accomplished over the past 10 years and to recognize that our outrage and our advocacy drove what has been achieved. And it will be our continued outrage and advocacy that will drive forward the health, wellness, and quality of life for all people living and surviving with HIV. We must demand universal health care and access to the quality of health that can enable us to survive. We must make sure that HIV care is informed by geriatric care, and that geriatric care is informed by HIV. We must demand economic security. Too often, living long means living with economic insecurity or even poverty. Guaranteed income must be part of our demands. We must look at direct transfers of cash. That is an option. Economic security is essential to living longer. We must change the narrative of the ending of the epidemic initiative. Too often when they say end the epidemic, we hear ending HIV services. We must make sure that the ending the epidemic is coupled with continuing HIV care and treatment. That is essential if we are going to achieve the longevity that is our right. Let's push for our individual and collective longevity. Let us say, positively living well and long. Thank you.